You're listening to Healthcare Now Radio. Stand by for This Just In, the latest in healthcare innovation and technology trends with your HIT advisor, Justin Barnes.
Thank you for tuning in, and welcome to This Just In. I'm your host, Justin Barnes. In these half-hour segments, I'll bring you the latest advances in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. As always, we're broadcasting from the This Just In studios on the Business Radio X network, as well as the Healthcare Now radio network. And before we dive into my guests today, I want to take a moment to remind everyone that we'll be broadcasting the This Just In radio show again live from the HIMSS annual conference, and to please stop by the show. The HIMSS conference this year will be in Orlando, Florida, starting on February 20th with 35,000 of your closest industry friends. We already have another great slate of CEO, CIO, leading care providers, industry thought leaders, and certainly policymakers joining the show. Some familiar faces, but many new as well. Much more to come from the HIMSS media team in the coming weeks, but we'll do our same two-day format and broadcast live from the HIMSS show floor February 20th and 21st. We're having a special stage built to resemble the ESPN College Game Day look and feel. So hopefully everyone is registering for HIMSS 17 in Orlando, and you'll come by the stage at booth 2123. Again, stop by 2123. It's guaranteed to be another great, informative time. For this episode, though, my 85th episode, we're speaking with a good friend, Jen Dennard, who's also known as a digital diva at HIStalk. Jen is the founder of Health IT Chicks community and supports women in health IT. Welcome back to the show, Jen.
Thanks. I cannot believe I have the privilege of being on your 85th episode. That's great.
That's great. You're always one of my most favorite guests because we get to kind of talk all things that's fun, informative, educational, but some groundbreaking, but we really cover the whole gamut because you and your role with HIStalk and your role in social media, you have your finger on the pulse of everything that's happening today and now in healthcare. So it's fun.
Yeah, I try, and given that it's today and now in healthcare, it's never a dull moment, right? There's always something new to talk about.
Well, even as we record this show, Dr. Price, I believe through his confirmation hearing, is being held up because there were some no-shows at the hearing. So every single day, there's always something interesting to speak about.
Yeah, I woke up this morning thinking I had an inkling of what I'd be writing about for HIStalk today, and that all changes in a minute. So
exactly, and nothing's changed. You and I've been doing this for a while now, and every year, I think, I'm an optimist, so I always think, hey, it's going to get easier, or it's going to get, it's just going to continue to evolve in these great and phenomenal ways. And while it does, there's also trials and tribulations. But I guess every industry deals with it, but healthcare seems to always be more magnified.
You're right.
All good.
Definitely.
So before we dive into all things happening across the healthcare industry, let's rewind just a little bit. And let my guests know, many of my guests and my listeners certainly know you for sure. You've been in there in the industry, certainly very popular on social media. HIStalk is probably the number one read blog, certainly, or posting system service in the industry. So, but where were you born and raised and attend college?
I was born in Pensacola, Florida, and I was raised in the Atlanta suburbs of Stone Mountain and Snellville. So I spent a good part of my childhood in those suburbs, and then graduated and ended up going to the University of Georgia, graduated from their wonderful journalism school, and just love UGA. And for those listeners that may be familiar with Athens, Georgia, where the school is located, I'm sure you'll identify with how much I love Athens. It's a great town. I loved it so much I ended up getting married there. And my husband and I are not huge football fans, but we're Athens fans. So we go back to that time to just soak up that college town feel.
Yeah, Athens is a very special town, and they happen to have a great football team too. I mean, UGA.
I do.
It's always been a good program, always in the top 20 for sure, and sometimes the top 10. Very exciting to watch, and they're actually with some of their coaching changes and even some of their team changes and recruiting changes, they're going to have a very strong 2, 3, 4, 5 years and beyond. So it's going to be exciting to be a Georgia fan moving forward.
It is, and you know, I've got to say, I do miss Mark Richt. Sorry, I just have to give him a little plug.
Oh, actually, I agree with you, and I know he's down in Miami now, and I actually wish him all the best, and I want Miami to do well, and I know he's a great coach, so I think he will do well, to be honest. So tell us, and I did do a very good job of explaining HIStalk. I mean, we all check it out. We get the great stories. We always break stories for the industry. But so tell us a little bit more about HIStalk and HIStalk practice.
Gosh, where do I start? So HIStalk, the HIS part stands for Health Information Systems. It's a kind of a grassroots blog that started out as this kind of under-the-radar effort, founded, created, the passion project of Mr. HIStalk. He's an anonymous healthcare CIO, hospital CIO, who just decided that he wanted to put his opinion out there about what was going on in the industry. And he's been doing this for, gosh, 12 years, if not 12, almost 12. And it evolved. So HIStalk deals with healthcare IT news for the enterprise environment, hospitals, healthcare systems. HIStalk Practice is the sister website that I write for on a daily basis, and that, of course, covers ambulatory news. And to me, I work for HIStalk now. It's a dream job, but before I was on the vendor side, and so HIStalk was my go-to morning read with my cup of coffee, and it was just such a great educational tool for me to use in that job, and I know a lot of readers use it for the same thing. But we've gotten quite a dedicated following of C-suite folks because Mr. HIStalk has just kind of tells it like it is. He prides himself on unbiased reporting, dash of opinion thrown in there, which people appreciate from time to time. Certainly gets our readers talking back and forth amongst themselves, which is always fun to read. So I encourage all your listeners to check it out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're in healthcare and certainly health IT, HIStalk needs to be one of your daily staples. And what I always appreciate about it is it's almost like a no-nonsense, no-holds-barred, no fluff discussion. There's no marketing ease. And if you try to market or do anything promotional, they'll call you right out.
He certainly will.
And I think it's refreshing, certainly in this world where everything is unicorns and lollipops. I think it's great to see a community that embraces truth, opinions, but pragmatic opinions. I don't see anything that's just way off in left field or right field. It's just literally, it's kind of what most people are thinking, and it's a forum where we can openly discuss or read about what's happening, what our feelings are about it, our opinions, and maybe even some progress that we can see from healthcare in general and IT in general. So. Yeah,
and Justin, looking at the stats, the demographics since since the election really, and especially since the inauguration, our readers have been reading on a daily basis more so than ever before. We're in such a time of change right now, and I think people really appreciate his perspective and just that no-nonsense approach that you mentioned.
Yep. Nope, I agree, and I do believe we are, obviously, we all know that we're in a time of change. I've been fortunate enough to work with Dr. Price, now almost 17 years. Worked with him actually early 2000. So here in Georgia, I mean, he is our congressional member from the 6th Congressional District, and he's been a stalwart in healthcare and certainly trying to shape certain healthcare policies, and also I believe I've seen how he fights on behalf of providers, care providers, He is a care provider himself, an orthopedic surgeon. He's part of Resurgence Orthopedic, one of the largest orthopedic groups in the country. So he gets healthcare from that perspective, and he's dealt with patients. He's dealt with making a payroll. He's dealt with providers and provider workflows and burdens that are placed on providers. And so I think he's going to have a unique and even fresh perspective on regulation for sure, and even in future legislation that's going to be created by the industry and by Congress. And so I think that I agree with you, there's going to be a lot of change. But I think, components of I'm not going to wade into the whole healthcare, Obamacare and ACA rip and replace. That's not where I'm going. I'm talking more about on the meaningful use, the programs that we're trying to implement, giving doctors easier systems to report within, or more integrated, so it's less burden on their workflow. I think that's where you're going to see a lot of positive change. And there could be other positive changes. I don't want to wade into the politics of it, but I do believe from his perspective, he is going to help ease the burden on providers, streamline operations, and I think bring better solutions, or more solutions.
And here's a fun fact. I believe that when he is confirmed, and I believe that's pretty much a foregone conclusion, barring any sort of further disruption, he will be the first physician to hold that role, I think in 24, 25 years. So yeah, having an MD as secretary, I think, will be great for physicians in the trenches.
I completely agree, and nurses, of course, and care providers alike. Yep, I totally agree. So I do want to know more. So tell us about HIT chicks, because that's I normally wouldn't use the word chicks, but this is part of your moniker. This is part of your hashtag in social media and on Twitter. So tell us about hashtag HIT chicks and that community.
Yeah. Well, we rebranded to Health IT Chicks, 2 years ago to make it a little clearer about what we were about. And, I have gotten some feedback on the word chicks, but I embrace it. And it does play off of the fact that we're on Twitter and we tweet and we're, so there's a little play on words there, but it's a social networking community that's been growing like gangbusters over the last 4 years, and we're obviously focusing on fostering relationships between women working in healthcare technology. Some of the topics that we cover in our monthly tweet chats and our annual meetups at HIMSS range from the wage gap in our industry and in the tech industry at large, professional development topics like mentorships and internships and getting back into the workforce after you've left for a while to care for, a child or a loved one. This year, I'm excited that we're kind of veering off of our traditional professional development path, and we're going to be talking to women who are working in the mental health technology space, and that's going to be at HIMSS. So for those folks who are going to be at HIMSS, check us out. That's going to be on Tuesday at the HIMSS spot in the morning. So, mental health and primary care are increasingly becoming integrated, whether that's through federal programs or incentives or through, startups that are seeing need from, stress relief apps are out there by the dozens, and women being kind of the healthcare CEOs of their families, and the last ones to ask for help when they need it. Mental health is kind of this topic that's not talked about too often, and I feel like we've got a great forum to do that and to really get a conversation going. So we're excited about that, and you can find us on Twitter, you can find us on LinkedIn. We'll have a website up, hopefully by HIMSS, and I've just been really blessed to kind of to manage this group of amazing women and men. We have quite a number of male supporters. So I hope that your listeners will check us out and give us some feedback.
For sure, and that's so hashtag Health IT Chicks.
Yes.
That's the hashtag on Twitter. And for everyone that may have joined us a little late, my guest today is Jen Dennard, a.k.a. Digital Diva from HIStalk. So let's talk a little bit about the industry. Before we dive in, I do want to dive into HIM17 a little bit, some of those big stories. But what are you covering either from HIStalk practice or HIStalk in general in the blog? What are some of the big stories that you're covering and hearing out there?
Well, you know, who would have thunk it? But I think the Theranos story is finally fizzing out. That was the story that just kept on giving in 2016. I think we've seen the last of that, though. Gosh, we've already touched on it. Just the new administration, the changes in Health and Human Services, CMS, ONC. I know you don't want to talk politics too much, but obviously, everybody's mind is, you know, the ACA, Obamacare, repeal and replace. Those are the buzzwords that I'm seeing a lot when I'm just hunting for news to cover on a daily basis. And of course, you've got leadership change, as we mentioned, with Tom Price's nomination and pending confirmation. And so that's at a high level, kind of the big stories our readers are really, really engaged in terms of commenting on the blogs and things like that. And on the flip side of that, on a more personal level, you know, I love my job in that I get to kind of write about what I am also personally interested in. And lately, I guess over the last 6 months, I have noticed a small, an increasingly large, I guess, section of the industry focusing on genetics at the point of care.
Yeah.
So that can be genomic decision support tools embedded in the EHR. Precision medicine initiatives are related to that. And, you know, what really sparked my interest, I'm working on an article about it now that probably will be up by the time your listeners are tuning in. I gave my mom, actually it's my husband's idea, we gave my mom a 23andMe test kit. So it's a spit kit. You send off, you get your genetics profile back. It's by no means a medical grade test, but it's fun in terms of seeing where you came from and anything that just might be of interest to you in terms of your ancestry. And I thought, you know, are we ever going to get to a point where we go to our annual well checkup and we're offered for $100 or less the opportunity to have a full genetic workup done and have that automatically dumped into our physician's EHR, or have it connect to whatever app we have, our personal health record that we're using, and that we can access right from our phone. So I've been talking to folks about that. There are some interesting players who are doing some really cool things on the precision medicine side of that. So I'm excited to learn more about that. And then given that this is the last day of January, but I still consider it to be the beginning of the year, people are hopefully still keeping up with their New Year's resolutions in terms of getting fit, getting more sleep, trying to de-stress a little bit. And from a health IT perspective, I've been thinking, how does technology fit into workplace wellness programs, and how are these programs actually affecting outcomes in terms of employee health and in terms of employer costs? Because as I'm sure your listeners have heard, wearables are not as popular as they once were. I just wrote about Fitbit getting rid of 110 folks, 6% of its workforce, because they had slow holiday sales. And so that's also kind of been on my mind, and something that I'm diving into as well.
Yep. No, those are actually strong topics. I remember even one of my good friends, Dr. Indy Uri, who founded one of the EHRs in the industry, and he ended up selling out as well. And he has. I
talked to him yesterday.
That's great. And he's a great friend of mine, a great guy. So was he a source for one of your stories?
He is, yeah, with his ActX endeavor, yeah. And they're doing some cool things with CompuGroup Medical and embedding those sorts of tools into EHRs for physicians. So, yeah.
Cool. Great. I was going to offer up Andy as a source, but you've already got him, so that's great. Very cool. So let's shift gears over to HIM 17. And so I always like when you I ask you to look into your crystal ball. And what do you see are going to be some of the big themes or maybe even controversial themes or excitements that we can look out and look for at annual conference this year?
Well, Justin, I was going to ask you the same question because to me, things are so up in the air right now. Normally, ONC comes out with a big breaking news announcement related to some federal program. I don't see that happening this year. It could, but I don't think it will. I think folks are just trying to hunker down and figure out what's next in terms of how do we get on board, get our ducks in a row for MACRA, quality payment programs like NIPS. Personally, from the pitches that I've seen coming through from vendors, I think, and just personal interest too, I think blockchain is going to be a really popular topic. Privacy and security will, of course, be around. We've had a ton of news about that over the last year, even 18 months. Population health management, although I think that's kind of ballooned into something that's maybe more, I think people are using that term in different ways. I don't think there's a standardized population health management, I guess, niche yet. It can encompass a lot. So I'll be interested to see how people are using that term, what they're aligning it with in terms of the services that they're offering. So, and as I mentioned before, I think behavioral mental health technologies may not be the hugest topic on the show floor, but I think we'll see more of that than we have in the past.
You will.
How about you?
Yep.
How about you? Tell me what you're seeing. What do you
expect?
So,
to be honest, I'm seeing a dichotomy in the market. I'm seeing, so yeah, we're going to have some of the discussions, and I'm actually trying to help to get some of these new policy leaders or policy leaders in general to HIMSS, because we're trying to get them off the hill and get to HIMSS, and so we are trying to make sure that we're having substantial conversations and around policy, around certainly regulation, but also any legislative discussions that we need to have. So we are trying to. I think we're going to still have that, probably not at the magnitude to your point. They always drop a big bill, or not a big bill, but a big piece of regulation. Sometimes a big bill, but a big piece of regulation, it could be days or weeks before we walk into that annual conference. And so a lot of the show is focused around that new rule or the legislation that they're discussing. However, and so we're still working on that track. I don't see any big rules or pieces of legislation, but more of let's get some of the new administration down to Orlando, and let's talk about the policy top of mind for everybody. So that's certainly one of the tracks. But when I say dichotomy in the market, I'm seeing where some of these larger health systems, and I'm in the middle of some of this, so I see how some of these larger health systems are partnering with some very large organizations, some technology companies, and also other innovators in healthcare, and really starting to get almost to your point of precision medicine, but looking at using big data to pinpoint and make real measurable changes in identification of diseases, in treatments, and they're rifling into the future of healthcare, and they're bringing it forward very quickly. So I'm seeing some of those really unique conversations, which are really cool. However, I'm seeing a majority of the market still stuck on trying to clear meeting for you stage 2. And PQRS, and then and battling through that, but it's not that hard to battle through. It's just you got to make those steps and invest in your business that way. So I'm seeing, that's why I say dichotomy. I'm really some of these big, not monolithic, but these leading health systems that are also growing in communities, adding hundreds of providers, thousands of care providers in general, and becoming much larger in their ecosystem, much more dominant moving forward. I'm seeing them continue to advance, and I'm watching the other groups, unfortunately, not make some of those investments, take strides backwards, and so it's a little scary being out there because we want a very vibrant healthcare market, and we want, these independent physician practices to do well. And we want everybody to thrive that wants to thrive and wants to make the necessary changes. So I think you're going to see more of that than ever before. And I'm on the side of trying to help certainly these regional healthcare systems, these regional players, or even some of the physician practices. We want to make them look at the bottom line and help them through that and show them, MIPS is not a huge step. MIPS is the right step, and here's how you can do it. And here's how you can do it very simply without upsetting the apple cart, but yet making miserable strides in transitioning to the future of healthcare and how healthcare is going to be delivered. So I think that's the dichotomy that I'm concerned about because you really want everybody to be able to move forward.
Right.
So,
well, as I'm sure you go ahead.
No, I got a couple of last questions. I do want to touch on your HIStalk party, and also want to know one of the areas where you get inspired. But close out. What are your thoughts on what I said? For sure.
Well, I was gonna kind of just tack onto that. As I'm sure you know, physician independents especially are it seems like they're just buried right now in terms of trying to figure out what they need to do next. I try to run a regular interview series with physicians. I call it 5 Questions With, and one of my questions that I've been consistently asking each and every person that I've interviewed over the last probably 6 months is, how are you preparing for MACRA and MIPS and quality payment programs? And 9 times out of 10, their answer has been, well, I've heard of it, and I know I need to be preparing for it, but I've got X, Y, and Z to do first, and I only have so much bandwidth, and I only have, one other office staff member that can help, and, I just want to provide good care for my patients, so that's where I am at the moment. So, it's a tough time for them.
Well, we are running up against our block here, but I'd always like to get to this closing question of all my guests, and it's actually turned into its own popular segment. What is your favorite place to get or be inspired?
Well, it used to be at the gym, but I quit going to the gym. It was too boring. So now I play tennis. So now where I go to get inspired, usually walks around the neighborhood, anywhere I can be alone. So that could be in the car. Away from the hustle and bustle of computer, home, work. That's usually when inspiration strikes. I did have a new source of inspiration that I'd love to recommend to your listeners. I went to my first retreat for women working in healthcare IT over the fall here in Atlanta, and it was thrown by my friend Max Stroud, and she is going to try and offer more of these throughout the year on different places across the country. So I'm looking forward to doing that again. It was just great to be able to connect with other women working in the industry and really kind of build friendships, talk about personal stuff, professional stuff, and I'm looking forward to doing that again in 2017.
Well, very cool. No, I think connecting with peers is key. It's root of my success for sure and happiness. But Jen, we always run out of time. You're always wonderful. You're a fantastic guest, and I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join the show.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you. And thank you to everyone for listening and joining us today. Please tune in weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. As always, you can track me on Twitter at HITadvisor and use the hashtag ThisJustIn for all the comments and to provide any comments for the show. In addition, my comments in my content we posted at justinbarnes.com. Thanks, everyone. Have a terrific week, and hopefully we'll see you all in Orlando. Stop by the show.